I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and welcome. You are listening to For a Green Future. My name is Joe DeMar, and for the next hour, I'll be your host as we talk about ecological and environmental issues. I am the political director for the Ohio Green Party, but I'm not speaking for the Green Party on this show. I'm speaking strictly for myself, and that goes for my guests too. And we're having a nice guest call in a little bit, who's a fellow that I think you'll be interested in hearing from. And I just wanted to say, we generally do the sponsorships at the bottom of the hour, but I wanted to let you know that we're going to have a new sponsor, and we're going to be talking about some things that you'll want to do based on this new mystery sponsor. So get your calendars out and get your cell phone app all ready to go, because we're going to be listing some things you're probably going to want to check out. But that'll be down at the bottom of the hour. Right now, let's see, we're going to be opening up the phone lines at 866-240-1065, 866-240-1065. That'll happen at 8:15 or so. And, this is the best call-in show in the Toledo area, but it gets better every time you call in. And so this morning, the cold snap that we just experienced is now officially over. The thermometer outside my door said 45 degrees as I was driving in. And it just occurred to me, I don't know, those of you who've been listening to this show since the first one, this is actually our 5th episode. You'll know that way back in the second episode, I said, we could have a cold snap and it could be 20 degrees below zero for the next 3 weeks. And that still wouldn't mean there is no global warming. And, I just thought it was kind of funny. I actually sort of predicted this whole cold snap and how long it would last. So, just feels good to be right about something. And but I did want to talk briefly about the difference between global warming and a cold snap like this one that we just had here. Well, a few weeks ago, I talked about how it's called global warming, but there's actually spots on the globe that are predicted to get cooler. For example, downwind of Lake Erie and the Buffalo area. As Lake Erie evaporates because of global warming, that'll actually cause cooler air over that section of western New York. And there's other places like that around the globe where global warming is actually going to get cooler. And global warming is also partly responsible for really bad cold snaps like the one we just had. And you are asking me, well, how is that possible? I mean, isn't it the globe is supposed to be heating up? And the answer is yes, and the globe is heating up. But what happens with global warming is that the air circulation patterns all change. And there's a jet stream, you've heard of the jet stream, I'm sure, that goes around the pole. And in the normal kind of weather and climate that we've got on this planet, the jet stream kind of acts like a fence, and it kind of keeps that really cold Arctic air way up there in the Arctic where it's supposed to be cold. Well, global warming, warming the oceans and warming the air, breaks up that jet stream. It kind of gets discontinuous. It sends big loops down into the lower parts of the country, and that some of that Arctic air manages to spill out and come down here. And so actually could have cold snaps because of global warming. It sounds, sounds like it doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you study the science behind it, you know that it makes perfect sense. And, Donald Trump tweeted, "Oh, we need more global warming. Where's it? Where's the global warming?" And everybody pounced on him because of that. But the reason they pounced on him is because that this is actually in the predictions, in the climate models, that there will be some cold snaps. But again, if you look at the overall temperatures, if you add them all up over time, you find out that the globe is getting warmer. I guess the best analogy is if you take something out of your freezer, take a frozen steak out of your freezer, put it on your kitchen table, and let it thaw. Okay, you will notice as it's thawing that the table around the steak actually gets colder. In fact, it can actually build up ice. And, if you were to pick the steak up, you could see where it was because it'd be surrounded by this little frozen circle. Well, it's kind of the same thing. The ice caps are melting, and part of what's happening in that process is some of the coldest air on the planet that was over the ice caps and belonged there, frankly, is making its way down as the ice caps melt. So, a little analogy for you to start the morning. But don't worry, this is not going to be an hour of solid science. We're going to cover a lot of ground, and we're going to do it in a positive, upbeat way, because here on For a Green Future, we want to give you ecological and environmental information that will help you and give you things that you can do to improve your lives and to make yourself healthier and wealthier and happier. And we also acknowledge that this is, in fact, Super Bowl Sunday, 2019. And I have a confession to make. It wasn't until I was driving in this morning and I was listening to The Best Week Ever that I actually knew who was in the Super Bowl. I know for some of you that's hard to even imagine, but I've been busy putting the radio show together and doing 1,000 other things, and I just didn't pay attention this year. So now I know it's between the Patriots and the LA Rams. At least I think I know that. I hope I've got that right. If I got it wrong, call in at 866-240-1065 and please correct me. So anyway, as an environmentalist, now I'm torn because Boston is a very progressive city. They've got a lot of very good environmental laws on the books. They've banned plastic bags in Boston. That's great. But LA, California has been doing some amazing things as a state. They've committed to cutting their greenhouse gas emissions, and they're going to go by like 2030. They're going to have half the greenhouse gas emissions. California is looking at closing its last remaining nuclear plant. They have laws on the books in California where if you build a new house, it has to have solar panels. It's just, it's not even a question there anymore for people who are building a new house. Should I put on solar panels? The answer there is yes. And so they're doing 1,000 really good things for the environment. So I'm torn, and I'm sort of from the East Coast, New York, Buffalo, that area. So who do I support? Do I support the Patriots or do I support the Rams? I don't know. Help me out. When we open up the phones at 866-240-1065, let me know who do you think I should be rooting for tonight? And that my history with football, I was a Buffalo Bill fan. I was a rabid Buffalo Bills fan, and I was the fan during those 4 years that the Bills went to the Super Bowl. 4 years in a row, the Bills went to the Super Bowl, and then we lost every time. And that fourth one, that kind of broke my heart, and I was like, I just can't do this anymore. So I was emotionally distraught. I'm kind of over it now, but but it was an amazing roller coaster ride. You know, I got to hear the largest comeback in NFL football history. I actually was listening to that game and it's funny how you always remember what you were doing when these things happen. I was moving into a new apartment with my wife and our little 3-year-old son, and you know, the Bills were down. It was horrible. It was like one of the worst losses ever in the NFL. It's what it looked like. And then they started coming back and coming back and coming back. And I'll never forget my little son. Every time Bills would get a touchdown, we'd cheer. And then, you know, I remember about halfway through the comeback, he said, "So have the Bills won yet?" And I had to say, "Well, not yet." And then I was amazed that we went on to actually win. And, you know, then we went on to the Super Bowl that year. I kind of feel like that's how it is with the environmental movement right now. I mean, we are down. I mean, I'm going to be talking a little bit later after the half-hour break. We're going to be talking about some of the environmental regulations that the Trump administration is rolling back. You know, protections that are there and that they're saying, nah, we don't need to protect people that way. We're down. But, you know, the Bills did not give up in that game. The Bills kept playing as if they were going to win, even when they were down. I think it was like 30 points. And in the end, they did win. And that's how I feel right now about the environmental movement, about us, about the world. There's some people that say, you know, oh, it's already too late. I reject that. It is not too late. We can change, and we will change, because really, if we want things to continue, we don't actually have a choice. So, so give me a call. I'm going to open up the lines in just a few minutes. 866-240-1065. That's 866-240-1065. And as I've said in past shows, one of the main points of For a Green Future is the idea that making this change is not going to hurt. Making this change is not going to cost you a ton of money. It's not going to make you poorer. It's going to make you wealthier. It's going to give you more economic power. It's going to make you healthier. You know, you will not get sick as often. And it's going to make you happier, because let's face it, I mean, if you go outside and you're breathing in nasty fumes, or, you know, there's clouds blocking the sun, clouds of pollution, you know, it's hard to be positive and upbeat in a polluted environment. But it's really easy to be positive and upbeat in a pristine, you know, when the trees are healthy and you see the fish jumping out of the water and, you know, there's birds flying overhead. It's much easier to be in a good mood and to be happy in that kind of a situation. So, so we also have coming up the letter from the future. My great-great-granddaughter, Marie I., was kind enough to send me another letter from the year 2299. And we'll be reading that at the bottom of the hour. And don't worry, you know, Mick Gonzalez is on his way. The Cheap Seats is a pure sports show that comes on right after us, right at 9 o'clock. So you don't have to wait too long to get back into pure sports. But you know, just stick with us for the next 45 minutes or so as we talk a little bit about the environment and the ecology, and you can maybe learn a little bit that'll help you along your way, help your family. And you know, it's a great thing once you get into environmentalists and you start to understand a little bit about how the world works, and you know, and you can actually take pleasure when you're able to do something that you know is going to help the environment. And you know, it's a very satisfying feeling that, you know, you've done something that will actually help the environment. And we're going to give you, like I said, our new sponsor is going to give you some opportunities to actually physically go and get your hands dirty and do something directly for the local environment, for right around here. So one of the things that, you know, we all need to do, and one of the things that you can do, one of the biggest things you can do to help the environment, and, you know, as a consumer, is make the right choice when it comes to what kind of car you're going to buy. And there's a lot of different sorts of environmentally eco-friendly cars out there now. You've got flex fuel cars. You've got hybrids. You've got plug-in hybrids. You've got all electric cars, and it's kind of confusing. And no, right now you can't get a big SUV, but let's face it, most of the time you don't need that big SUV, and it's very comfortable to drive some of these all electric and some of these hybrid cars. And so my first guest is on the line, Craig Zirble, and I asked him to join us because he's a fella who's owned several different sorts of environmentally friendly cars. And I just wanted to talk to him a little bit about his experience and get his opinion on this, because tax returns are coming up. You might be thinking it's time to get a new car, and so I want you to be thinking about, think this time, get a car that actually helps the environment instead of causes more global warming. So, Craig, hi, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Joe. Thanks for having me on the show.
Good morning. Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So Craig, you're somebody who has been looking at this question for a long time, right? About whether to get a hybrid or an electric car. And so tell us a little bit, when did you first when was your first sort of eco-friendly car? How long ago was that?
Good question. I think it was about 2011. We bought a Toyota Prius.
Mm-hmm.
It was used. It was a 2007 Prius. So not a very fancy Prius, not the kind that you can plug in. The Prius Prime these days you can plug in.
Mm.
In 2014, we bought a Chevy Volt. That's with a V as in Victor, and that's a hybrid car. You can plug it in, get about 40 miles of range on a charge, electric, and then it switches over seamlessly to running on gas. And in 2018, we bought the all-electric Chevy Bolt. That's Bolt with a B as in boy. So we've had, the Prius, a truly plug-in hybrid, and an all-electric car.
Okay. Well, and before we get into the, the nuts and bolts about miles per gallon and things like that, what was the ride like in these cars? Were they comfortable? Did they handle well? How did you suffer any by buying one of these more environmentally friendly cars?
It's a great question. The electric cars, I just love driving them. I will never buy another gas-powered car. So starting from a stop, they are smooth, they accelerate quickly, quietly, and it just feels like it's effortless. If you're in start from a stop sign, you're in a 35-mile-an-hour zone, you can be at 45 way faster than you would expect and way smoother, so you've got to watch your speed. But no, I really love driving electric cars.
So you can almost have too much power in an electric car.
You can have too much power, yeah. Starting from a stop, like on a 4-lane highway, if I accelerate at a comfortable rate and I look in my mirror, I'm way ahead of everybody. And the thing I think about is if I'm driving, on a 2-lane highway and I'm stuck behind someone who's going 50 miles an hour, there is absolutely no problem passing them. There is plenty of power at 50, at 55, at 65 miles an hour. So it's not like some kind of a super high miles per gallon gas car with a lawnmower engine in it or something, right? Mm-hmm. It's got lots of power.
Well, and could I ask, have you ever accelerated at an uncomfortable rate? Did you ever just put the pedal to the metal and see what happened?
I have done that.
Uh-huh.
If you're not careful, you make sure that if there's any water on the road, you may spin the tires real easily.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, for example, pulling onto a highway from a stop sign, you're accelerating and turning at the same time. It's actually almost a little too much acceleration.
Well, I think that's a problem a lot of our listeners would kind of like to have. I mean,
I do like to have that problem.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, so you started out with a Prius. Tell us a little bit about that experience in terms of miles per gallon and so forth.
Right. So the Prius would get about 45 miles a gallon, and one of the tricks that it uses is when you take your foot off the gas, it uses the motion of the car to turn an electric generator and put electricity into a battery. And then when you come to a stop, it uses the electric generator as a motor and the energy stored in the battery to accelerate the car. So the Prius does really well starting from a stop. But then after a little bit, the gas engine kicks in to give you more power. That's the older Prius. I would definitely suggest if people are thinking about a new car, think about getting a Prius Prime, which you can plug in and charge and get about 25 miles of range on electricity.
So
that means that, yeah, go ahead.
So this when you say plug in, do you need to install something in your garage, or is it literally just plug into the wall socket and into your car?
It's a great question. I don't actually know the answer with the Prius Prime. I would expect that you can plug it into a 110-volt outlet, and it would take maybe 10 hours to charge. So if you drive around town during the day, plug it in at night, by the morning it should be recharged and ready to go.
Yeah. You touched on something that all these electric cars and hybrid cars do that I think is one of the coolest things about them, and that is the regenerative braking, which is a big fancy word, but it simply means that when you hit the brakes on one of these cars, it's not just a physical squeezing of your rotors, with your calipers and so forth. You actually create an electric current. It uses an electric. You cause an electric motor in the brakes to take some of that kinetic energy and turn it directly into electricity that then recharges the batteries. And I just think that's really cool, because when you brake in a regular car, literally all that energy just gets lost. It just goes away as heat because you've wasted it. And
right.
And
you paid for the gasoline that made you move, and every time you hit the brakes in a gas-powered car, you're just burning off the money that you paid.
Right. Yeah, and that is an important point. I mean, right now gas prices are suppressed, artificially suppressed, I would say, but they're not going to stay that way. And I imagine you've probably saved a fair amount of money over the years with these high mileage cars.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Prius already is, at 45 miles a gallon, is much better than your typical car. But yeah, I was running the numbers a little bit, with my experience driving the electric cars and how far you can go on a charge. And the way I calculate it, so I live in Bowling Green, and the cost per mile for me to drive down here is about 3.7 cents for the electric cars. And even a Prius costs like 3.9 cents a mile. So it's a high efficiency car, but the electric cars are cheaper to drive per mile. And in Toledo, the electricity costs are a lot lower than Bowling Green, actually. So as far as I can tell, it would cost a lot less in Toledo to charge and drive an electric car.
Cool. All right, so you've bought your Prius, your first hybrid car, and you're loving it. What other experiences about that would you like to share? And then how did you transition into the Volt?
Yeah, let's talk about the Volt. I think General Motors is going to stop producing the Chevy Volt, the hybrid car. I'm not quite sure why, but the Prius Prime is going to, I guess, continue to be made. And what's great about that is most days when you've got small amount of driving, in the case of the Prius Prime, 25 miles or under, you can be driving all electric all day long and charge overnight. When we first got the Chevy Volt, we went, I think, 1,300 miles between trips to the gas station to fill up the gas tank.
Wow.
And boy, did that feel good. It was really nice. I have no interest in standing outside in the winter at a gas station putting gas in my car. I'd much rather drive into my garage and plug in the car. It's much easier. Well,
that's true. I mean, especially like you could have gone these past 3 weeks that all the rest of us were out and in the wind chill and
right. I did go these last 3 weeks without going to the gas station.
Yeah, you could just sort of drive by and say, glad I'm not doing that.
Honestly, I don't even notice them anymore, gas stations.
Oh, okay.
They're not on my mind.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so you went to the Volt. And did that require special charging apparatus in your?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, the Chevy Volt comes with a 110-volt charger. So you drive in, leave the charger plugged into the wall, plug the Volt in, and it charges and gives you 40 miles of range in about 10 hours. And that worked out super well. But then occasionally there would be times when we'd come home late at night, and then we'd have to be up and out early in the morning, and the car wasn't all the way charged. And I got a little bit worried about the charger pulling 1,500 watts, for 10 hours in a row overnight. Things can overheat.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a high-capacity charger. It's a 32-amp charger installed. And this is one of the things about buying, especially the all-electric Bolt, is on that one, when you go on a long trip and you come back and the battery's totally drained, it'll take 9 hours charging on a 220-volt electrical line.
Mm.
And so that's still overnight. And so charging a car, an all-electric car, is a little slower than going to the gas station and filling up with gas.
Mm-hmm.
So we put in this charger. And I, one of the things about electric cars is I don't want to paint it like they're perfect in every way. They're a whole lot of fun to drive, but they're slower to charge. And to put in the charger itself cost $600, and our electrical panel didn't have room for a 40-amp circuit breaker. So the electrician said we needed a new breaker box. Mm-hmm. And so, $600 for the charger, about $1,400 for the box.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money, and that's up front.
Right.
On the other hand, after that, we save money every mile we drive in the electric car.
Mm-hmm. And you were able to use that extra capacity when you went from the Volt to the Bolt, I'm assuming?
Right, absolutely. So, right, absolutely. So now we have two chargers. We've got the 110 and we've got the 220-volt charger, and so we have two cars in the garage. They're plugged in all the time, keeping the batteries warm and ready to go whenever we want to jump in the car and drive away. It's good.
Yeah, that is cool. And, we had, last week we had a fellow on who has carbon negative houses. Mm-hmm. He's got so much solar that he actually makes about $4,000 a year in getting paid by the utility company for the electricity that he's putting on the grid. Mm-hmm. Over and above what he uses. So if you were to get a fair amount of solar, then a lot even of that electricity could be, you could be generating yourself.
Right. The difficulty with that is that the sun is out during the day, of course, and if your car is somewhere else during the day, then you're not charging straight off of that electricity. So it is a little difficult, right? Charging overnight means it's hard to use solar right then. So
True.
We need a system where we, generate with solar, maybe charge at work. So, encourage your employer to think about putting a charging station in, maybe in the farthest parking spot in the parking lot. Start wherever you can. But that's a great time to be charging. But for sure, if you've got solar panels at home, you can be carbon neutral, carbon negative.
Mm-hmm. And, the Tesla walls are coming along now. We had a gal who's putting some solar on her house down there in BG, and she's bought 2 of these Tesla walls, which gives you great battery capacity, so you can store the electricity you generate in the daytime and then put it into your car at night if you want to do it that way.
Just perfect. Yep. Yeah. Good.
So, all right. So, so do you want to compare the Bolt and the Volt now? So that, the Volt, I didn't know they're going to stop making the Volt. I'm sorry to hear that.
Me too.
But so now they're going to focus on the Bolt. So could you compare the Volt and Bolt?
Right. Yeah. So you might think because they named them almost the same thing, Volt and Bolt, that they'd be similar cars. But the Bolt is the newer one. It's all electric. That's Bolt, B as in boy. It's a little more upright. There's more headroom. It's a shorter, stubbier sort of car, which is really nice for the turning radius. It's a little wider, and it has 3 seats in the back. The earlier Volts only had 4 seats, but the all-electric Bolt has 5 seats. It feels roomy inside, and I think it's got better pickup than the Volt did, and I was already delighted with the Volt, but the Bolt, I think, it's all-electric, and it really accelerates well. So it's really a pleasure to drive.
Cool. And any trouble with the heater in this cold snap period?
The heater works just fine,
okay.
But it is true that when you're driving in the wintertime, the electric range is reduced. So in the summertime, the range is, they say, 238 miles. And I was getting pretty close to that. That's really good. So from Bowling Green, I can get to the Detroit airport and back. I've gone to Cleveland, charged a little in Cleveland and back. But in the wintertime, the batteries are cold. They don't put out as much power. You're running the heater and maybe running the defroster. And so, whereas in the summer you might get 238 miles of range, they say, in the winter it's maybe more like 150 on a cold, cold day. Wow. And
that's still really amazing compared to what electric cars used to get.
Right. And I think you can be very comfortable with that range. You can count on the prediction that it's making. But 150 miles is a lot less, than 238. So. And I think it won't charge maybe quite as fast when the batteries are cold. So it's still a consideration. The electric car makers are going to be absolutely focusing on this. They're going to get better and better. I think there are going to be a lot of different cars coming out in the next few years. And so I think people's choices are only going to get better and better as time goes on.
Wow, that's cool. All right. Well, thanks very much, Craig.
My pleasure.
Any other insight you'd like to share? Any other way you'd like to encourage people to buy these more environmentally sustainable cars?
That's a great question. People don't buy new cars every year. I would encourage you to start thinking about it, to start thinking about if it makes sense for you to have, if you have multiple cars and one of them is all electric, that's a really good situation, because then if you have to go on a long drive, you've got a gas car, which, it's easier to take on a long drive. The Chevrolet has sold enough electric cars that the $7,500 tax rebate for buying a Chevy Bolt will start phasing out after March of this year. So I would encourage people to get out to a Chevy dealer and test drive a Bolt. I would encourage you to go test drive a Tesla or any other car, but the Bolts are less expensive, and they're really nice cars, and you can get them. And, really think hard about buying one sometime soon. But as new car makers make electric cars, they'll also have a tax credit or tax rebate as long as the federal government keeps that program in place.
So, but it sounds like this is the year to do it if you're thinking about getting one, because
this is a great year to do it.
Yeah, $7,500 is that's nothing to sneeze at.
But don't commit to buying one. Go test drive one. I think you'll enjoy driving it, and you'll see what I'm talking about, how much fun it is to drive.
All right. Well, Craig, thanks very much. It was a very good call.
Very good. Thank you.
And,
my pleasure.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks.
And once again, I want to remind everybody that you're listening to For a Green Future. I'm your host, Joe DeMar, and we're going to be talking about, and we are talking about, environmental, ecological issues, things that affect you personally. And the phone lines are open at 866-240-1065. That's 866-240-1065. You can call and you can ask or comment on any sort of environmental question, any ecological question. I've been studying ecology all my life, up in my mid-50s now. That's a lot of ecology studied, but still just a fraction of what there is to know, of course. But I'd be happy to talk with you about any sort of thing that's been sort of bothering you on the environment. What the heck is blue-green algae anyway, or whatever you'd like. 866-240-1065. So we are at the bottom of the hour now, as we say in Radio Land, a little bit past it, in fact. And so it's time to look at our sponsors. And as promised, we have a brand new sponsor that we're very happy to be a part of this show, and that is the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces. They maintain the quality of green spaces. They provide engaging programming that teaches people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead you on outdoor adventures. And that's what I want to talk to you about right now. Some of these outdoor adventures that are being offered to you by the Park District. And, just take a little trip down to Wood County, and there's 20 different parks and nature preserves all around Wood County that are open every day from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every single day of the year. And they're just a joy to go to. And, my wife went walking yesterday in one of them when it warmed up a little bit, got out there and had a great walk. And there's nothing like a walk in nature to improve your mood. The exercise is good for you. studies literally have shown that being out in trees, in fields, in nature, actually increases people's happiness level. It makes them less depressed. And so that's something we could all use. And so here, a couple opportunities to do that are coming up here. We have both volunteer opportunities and just fun things you can do. And I'll do the fun things first. On Friday, March 7th, from 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m., they're going to be telling the story of the swamp at Otsego Park. And they're asking you to register for this one beforehand. You go to wcparks.org in order to register. Another event they're having that they'd like you to register for is Friday, March 22nd, from 7 to 9 p.m. It's called Wildflowers and Wildside Beer and Trivia. And that's at the WW Knight Preserve. And again, you'd register at wcparks.org. WW Knight, they've got a great building there. My wife's father just had his 95th birthday, and we had this big party for him at the W Knight Preserve, and it was just beautiful. And they've got these huge windows that look out onto this natural area. And while we were having the party, a bunch of deer came right up to the building, and everybody grabbed their cameras and was taking pictures. Really beautiful spot. So that's Friday, March 22nd, 7 to 9, Wildflowers and Wildside Beer and Trivia. Then there's one more thing that you should mark on your calendars. It's coming up in May 11th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. is their annual plant sale. That's at the Park District headquarters. And there's no registration, but you can pre-order at wcparks.org/friends. And these are all native plants that the park system has grown. And we're going to be doing a show coming up on invasive species and how important it is to preserve the native plants of this area, because a lot of them are really cool. And then there's a couple volunteer opportunities in February. All through this month, they're going to be getting the plants ready to sell at the May plant sale. And so you can volunteer there. And to volunteer for any of these parks events, you go to wcparks.galaxydigital.com. And they've got a sign-up area, and it's a great way to get your hands dirty and actually help nature, help preserve our local ecosystems. And another opportunity for that will be coming up March 23rd. They're going to have a volunteer woody plant removal at the Sawyer Quarry Nature Preserve, which is, I believe that's the newest park in the Wood County Park System. And April 16th, it's Conservation Volunteer Day at Otsego Park. And again, you would register at wcparks.galaxydigital.com. And then my favorite here, April 28th is going to be the Community Earth Day celebration. That's at the Montessori School on Sandridge Road, 515 Sandridge Road in Bowling Green. Don't need to register for that. Just come on in, park, and have a lot of fun celebrating Earth Day, which is one of my favorite holidays. So many thanks to our new sponsor, Wood County Park District, and get on out there. Get out there in nature. And so be greener with the Wood County Park District. So thank you very much for that. And now our other sponsor for this hour is DeMar Consulting. DeMar Consulting is a computer consulting business. They will come out to your home, and they will help you with any computer problem that you've got. If you've got viruses, if you've got software that you want installed, if you've got things that need backing up, DeMar Consulting will come out to your home and help you with it right there. You don't need to unplug your computer or bring it in anywhere. You don't have to do this over the phone, where you've got questions that really it's just so much easier when there's somebody right there helping you who can explain things. And everyone who works at DeMar Consulting has a degree in computer science, so they know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, and so give them a call. The phone number is 419-973-3000. That's 419-973-3000. Or you can go to their website, which is www.demarconsulting.com. DeMar is spelled D-E-M-A-R-E. And then DemarConsulting.com. No dashes or underlines or anything. So check them out. Give them a call. If you've got something that's been nagging you about your computer, it seems like my hard drive's filling up way too fast or something like that, give them a call. They'll come out and check it out for you. So thanks very much for our sponsors. And now we're coming up in the last 20 minutes or so of this show. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten the letter from the future. I mean, Marie my great-great-granddaughter, went to all the trouble of sending it back in time so that I could read it to you. So I'm not going to, forget about it. But there's something we need to talk about right now in our present time. And unfortunately, it's a kind of an unpleasant thing. And again, feel free to call in about any of this stuff at 866-240-1065. The Trump administration has kind of a cavalier attitude towards government, I guess is a kind way to put it. They really, we saw with the government shutdown that he really doesn't value the government itself. The rest of us, on the other hand, we depend on the government, and we depend on the government to help us and protect the environment. And one of the most basic ways that a government can function is that if a problem occurs, if there's a disaster of some kind, the government, through the government, we can look at that and say, okay, in order to prevent that disaster in the future, we're going to pass a law or we're going to make a regulation that does X, that stops it from happening. Sounds right, doesn't it? It sounds, like pretty basic. If you've got a government, it's going to have laws and regulations that protect the people. Why else have one? And so there have been several disasters in recent years, and some of these have now led to new regulations being put in place that would prevent those disasters from happening in the future. And unfortunately, just recently, the past few months, the Trump administration has proposed getting rid of a lot of these regulations. And these are things which directly impact you, real threats to your family's health and welfare that would be protected by the old regulations that Trump and his administration are saying, no, we don't need to protect the people. The only thing we need to protect is the profits from the companies. So one of these, I'm just going to go through some of these so that you guys have an idea of what's going on. One of these are the brakes on trains that are carrying fossil fuels. A few years back, there were several huge accidents where trains derailed that were carrying oil or natural gas or liquefied natural gas. Basically, these trains, started calling them bomb trains, because when they derail and those tankers explode, literally, it's like dropping a bomb on a community. And a really large bomb too. They, lots of people were killed, lots of homes destroyed. There was a couple towns that got completely burned down because fuel trains derailed in them. And, Bowling Green and Toledo, both. There's a lot of train tracks here. A lot of trains go right through the middle of Bowling Green and go through Toledo because we're at such a strategic point on the Great Lakes. People kind of have to come past us to get anywhere. So there was a rule talking about fuel train brakes that they wanted to put advanced electronic brakes on them. These are brakes that can sense, hey, we're going too fast. This is the wrong speed, and will automatically kick in. So even if the engineer is trying to push past the safety limits, these advanced electronic brakes will say, no, slow it down, and literally would save lives and would save homes and would save properties, because there's going to be more fuel train derailments. It's just a matter of odds. It's inevitable. There's so many of those trains running every day. It's going to happen, especially now that the Trump administration has rescinded the rule saying that you have to have electronic brakes. Another is methane emissions. Now, Obama and the Democrats were like, methane is the bridge fuel to the carbon-free future. They said, we'll move away from coal by going to methane. Unfortunately, what you have to do with methane to get any amounts of it now, because most of the methane fields the easy ones are all depleted already. So they use fracking. And fracking causes methane leakage. Methane doesn't just stay in the little pipe that's sucking it out of the ground. Once you fracture that stone and the methane can come up anywhere along that fracture, it'll make its way up to the surface. And there's other ways and places in which methane leaks in the process of fracking and then putting the fuel into tankers or putting it into a pipeline and then shipping it out. So the Obama administration put in lots of rules regarding methane because methane is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So, yeah, you could say, oh, look, we're burning methane and it doesn't put out as much CO2 as coal. The problem is that, but at the same time, methane is leaking from all these processes. And methane is actually, I believe, 8 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So it doesn't take much in the way of methane leaking to cancel out all the benefits of shutting down a coal plant. And in fact, there was a study done by NASA during the Obama administration that said, actually, they looked at the satellite data and looked at how much methane was leaking. And they said, yes, the methane leaks have completely wiped out the benefits of shutting down coal plants. And so, the globe continues to warm. And, we environmentalists, we Greens, knew from the beginning that whole methane as a bridge to that was, I want to use a polite word here. Nah, I'm not going to use a polite word. That was crap. We knew that wasn't true right from the beginning, that it was just the coal and the fossil fuel industry trying to keep its political power. And they had Obama in their pockets, and they had the Democrats in their pockets, as well as the Republicans. And I mean, the Republicans are so deep in the pockets, they're down there in the lint. You kind of have to dig them out to get at them. The Democrats, though, also were all for fracking, and it's been an environmental disaster, just as we predicted it would. But anyway, Obama had in place regulations that would limit the amount of methane leakage. Trump has now said, nah, go ahead, leak all you want. It's no problem because, we will go into why at this call. We will go in a future show. And then the one last one I wanted to tell you folks about was offshore drilling safety. Remember the Deep Horizons, the huge Gulf oil spill, the one that we all watched as, they had the camera on the floor of the Gulf of Mexico, and we all watched that oil spewing out into the water for weeks and weeks, and they had no idea how to stop it. And it was one of the most terrible environmental disasters of this century. Hopefully it's the most, because hopefully we won't have anything more on that scale. But, they looked at that accident, they saw what went wrong, they put in place regulations that would prevent another disaster like that. Specifically, they have a regulation saying that you have to, if you're an oil company, you have to have a third party come and inspect your whole operation. Just because, if you ask a company to inspect itself, they're always going to cut corners because they're always looking for that profit, and they're never going to do an adequate job. So Trump has said to that Obama-era regulation, he said, forget it. We don't care if there's another oil spill. We don't care if it wipes out fisheries and covers the beaches. And these regulations that were put in place that protected us after these disasters. This is not the old days where, you could make an argument that the government didn't take into account industry. They just made regulations based on what they thought was right in terms of the environment. That has not been the case for almost 30 years. These regulations were made with full industry input and with full cost-benefit analysis, because nowadays you have to justify an environmental regulation based on cost. not just on protecting the environment. That's not good enough anymore. So this story that some politicians tell about, burdensome regulations, that is no longer true. Industry is right there helping write all these regulations. And so Trump is going above and beyond what they could have ever hoped for, because they already got what they wanted. These regulations were specified to their input. But Trump still is just overturning them and saying, have a field day, wreck the environment. It's on me. So these are the kinds of things that, it's not always pleasant to hear, but they need to be said. Somebody needs to say this. Somebody needs to point this out. And since I have the mic, I'm going to do it. So, all right. Well, enough about that heavy stuff in the present. It's time to take a trip to the green future. All right. Thanks for sticking with me. And here we have our letter from my great-great-granddaughter, Marie I. Every morning next to my bed, I have a bedstand there, and there's this little flash of photons. So photons have something to do with this time travel business. I don't know what, but and there appears a letter from my great-granddaughter. Here it is. Greetings, dear great-great-grandpa. Greetings from the year 2299. It's getting very busy here on the Kola Peninsula. I told you that last week we got our first shipment of nuclear waste. Well, we are all running around getting ready to actually inject the first test sample deep into the earth. The first step is to take the waste, which is a nasty mix of all different kinds of chemicals, and to separate out all the different elements. We're doing this with a process called supercritical water thermal oxidation. Supercritical water thermal oxidation was actually invented in the 20th century, but it wasn't used much because it was so much cheaper to burn or bury your toxic wastes. Here in your future, we understand that saving money is not as important as protecting the earth. In the end, you actually save more money by doing it right. You must be wondering how I know so much about supercritical water thermal oxidation, since I'm a bacteriologist. Well, remember how I told you a few weeks ago that a bunch of us were watching the Northern Lights with a bonfire? At that bonfire, I kind of bumped into a guy named Michael, who is an engineer working on that part of the project. Yesterday we had lunch together, and he was talking all about it. It's very interesting. Next week, I'm taking a trip out to town to pick up some supplies, and he's coming with me. We'll let you know how that goes. In the meantime, keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry. The future does get better. It is a green future, and you will succeed. So, ta-ta for now. Your loving great-great-granddaughter, Marie I. So, isn't that a nice letter from Marie? And, she has said that if you guys have questions for her, you can ask me, and, I could write her a letter because she's got a box of letters that I've already written her, and she's opening them up, as we go along week by week, and so she can answer letters from our present in the future and then send those letters back to us. So if you have any questions for Marie I about how the green future works, don't hesitate to let me know. There's a number of ways you can get into contact with us. One is our website. That's probably the best one. And that's Joe DeMar for a greenfuture.org. That's JOEDEMAREFOR, greenfuture.org. And so you can email me at joe@joedemarforgreenfuture.org. You can go to our website, which I recommend you do, because you can also, at the website, you can order. I'm a writer, and I've written a book of short stories called Venusification, and you can order that book right there on the website. Like I said, you can get in contact with us via email, so you can send us messages and ask what kinds of things you'd like to see on this show. What environmental issues have you always kind of been curious about? And don't worry, the cheap seats with Mick Gonzalez is on its way. It'll be here in just about 5 minutes. So, and we'll get right back to Super Bowl talk. But we've got about 5 more minutes. And so another way to contact us, you could call or text 419-973-5841. That's 419-973-5841. there's also now we don't just broadcast this live, much as I love live radio and I love being able to talk with you guys. We also now, since it's the 21st century, we have this as a podcast, so you can find us on iTunes. Just search for A Green Future. You can also subscribe directly on our podcast provider, which is podomatic.com. So just go to podomatic.com and search for A Green Future and subscribe. We had jumped up from 27,000. No, I'm sorry. We were at 37,140th in their rankings for the Talk Politics section. We had jumped up to 66th, but now we're back down to about 120th or so. So if it, just one or two more people subscribe to our podcast there, we're going to jump right back up again. And finally, we are available on YouTube. Once again, you just search for A Green Future, and you'll find our YouTube channel there. All the shows will be there and are there. And one thing about watching this, getting this through YouTube, is that we supplement the audio with visual aids. So like if we're talking about a scientific issue or something, you might see a chart or you might see a graph, or if I have a guest on, I try to get a picture of my guest so that when you watch the YouTube version, you can see what they look like. And speaking of guests, next week our show is going to be on the Lake Erie Bill of Rights. And our guest will be Marky Miller. Once again, she was a guest on our first show. And because the election is coming up, those of you in Toledo are being asked to vote on this Lake Erie Bill of Rights. And, you should know what it is, and you should get to hear from one of the people that put it on the ballot, why they put it on the ballot, what they hope to accomplish with it. So that's our next show, and that's February 10th. So we'll hope you join us for that show. And I think we've pretty much covered everything I meant to cover this show. Wow, that's kind of a first. Let me just rattle some papers here, as a certain other radio talk show host that I dislike does. And yep, that's it. So remember, go to visit our sponsors, WC Parks or Wood County Parks at wcparks.org. Get your computer problem solved from DeMar Computer Consulting. And thank you very much for listening. I just wanted to say, once again, I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to talk with everybody about environmental and ecological issues. And these are the vital issues of our day, and they're the ones you don't hear discussed anywhere else. More's the pity. So give us a call next week at 866-240-1065. I'll be waiting for your call. And once again, this is the best show in the Toledo area, but it gets better every time you call. So thanks very much, and we will see you next week.
All we need to make this country run, but that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run, but that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!